Okay, so you want to own a storage facility. A few rows of metal boxes on cheap land off the highway. No employees to manage, no shake machine to break. Hundreds of people paying you rent every month for stuff they never come to see. You've driven past one, counted the doors, done the math, and thought, this is the laziest money in real estate. And here's the thing, you're mostly right. Americans now pay roughly $45 billion a year to store their own belongings. By common counts, there are more storage facilities in this country than McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway locations combined. And the biggest operators keep close to 80 cents of every rental dollar as operating profit. That margin makes apartments and office towers look like charity work. But here's what you can't see from the highway. The sheet metal box is a decoy. The real machine is a pricing algorithm, a customer who is psychologically unable to leave, and a handful of corporations quietly buying the whole industry. Self-storage stopped being a mom-and-pop business a long time ago. Today it runs some of the most sophisticated money machinery in American real estate, and the little guy is being priced out of his own daydream. By the end of this video, you'll know what it actually costs to get in, and why the cheap metal boxes now run into the millions. You'll see exactly why the margins are so absurd that Wall Street fell in love with garages. And you'll meet the customer this entire industry is really built on. He said he'd clear his unit out next month. 6 years ago. Let's start with what a storage facility actually is, because those orange doors are hiding more variety than you'd think. Here's the first thing nobody tells you. There's no such thing as a generic storage facility. The industry splits into tiers, and the tier decides everything about the money. At the bottom, the classic. Single-story, drive-up buildings on the edge of town. Metal walls, asphalt, a keypad gate, maybe a camera. You back your truck to the door, roll it up, done. These are the cheapest to build, the cheapest to rent, and thousands of them are still owned by the families who put them up in the 80s and 90s. In the middle, the modern suburban facility. Partly or fully climate-controlled, which means heated and cooled hallways, because Americans increasingly store furniture, electronics, and photographs that heat and humidity destroy. Climate control costs more to build, and it commands noticeably higher rent per square foot. At the top, the urban multi-story. 3, 4, 5 floors of storage in a city where land is brutal. Elevators, loading bays, sprinkler systems, sometimes a lobby nicer than the apartment buildings around it. These cost the most by far, and they only make sense where people live in small spaces and own too much stuff, which, in America, describes most cities. And then there's a split that matters more than any of the buildings. Who runs the place? On one side, the owner-operator, who answers the phone and sweeps the hallways himself. On the other, the REITs, the giant public real estate trusts. Public Storage, Extra Space, CubeSmart, and U-Haul. They own enormous portfolios outright, and they also manage thousands of facilities that other people own, for a fee, with their brand on the sign and their software setting the prices. Hold on to that arrangement. A small owner paying a giant to run his facility with the giant's algorithm. That's the whole modern industry in one sentence, and we're coming back to it. First, the bill. Because the phrase cheap metal boxes is doing a lot of lying. Start with the fantasy version. Buy cheap land, put up steel buildings, collect rent forever. The steel really is cheap. Everything around the steel is not. Current construction guides commonly quote somewhere between $65 and $120 per square foot to build climate-controlled storage, and that's before you've bought the land. A modern facility that can compete in a decent market usually runs 50 to 80,000 rentable square feet. Multiply it out, add land, site work, permits, and the cost of running an empty building while it fills, and the cheap metal boxes become a project commonly cited in the $4 to $8 million range. And that assumes the city lets you build it all. Storage creates almost no jobs and almost no sales tax, so planning boards fight it constantly. Approvals can drag on for years. In the metros where demand is strongest, the land alone can cost more than an entire rural facility. And the money doesn't start flowing on opening day. A brand new facility opens empty. Filling it takes commonly 2 to 4 years of discounts, marketing, and mortgage payments with no offsetting rent. Developers call this lease-up, and it's where undercapitalized builders quietly die. Door number 2. Buy an existing one. Industry data from the past couple of years puts average sale prices at roughly $150 to $160 per rentable square foot, with stabilized facilities commonly trading around a 6% cap rate, give or take. Translation: a modest running facility is a 7-figure purchase, and a good one in a good market is 8 figures. The river of money is already flowing, and you pay full price for the river. There is a third door, and it's the one the smart small money actually uses. Find an old drive-up facility still run by the family that built it decades ago. Paper ledger, below-market rents, no website, a phone that rings in someone's kitchen. Those still sell for far less per foot, precisely because they're run like it's 1994. You're not buying the metal, you're buying the gap between how it's run and how it could be run. But why would anyone pay millions for boxes full of other people's furniture? Because of what happens on the other side of the ledger. This is where storage stops looking like real estate and starts looking like a printing press. Take a single 10 by 10 unit, 100 square feet of concrete floor and metal walls. National rates have bounced around lately, but that unit commonly rents for somewhere between $75 and $120 a month, depending on the market and on climate control. Call it roughly $1 to $1.40 per square foot per month. Now compare that to an apartment. The apartment tenant pays more per square foot, sure, but look at what the apartment owner has to provide. Plumbing, kitchens, heating, repairs, tenant protection laws, midnight phone calls about the water heater. The storage owner provides a floor, a door, and a light bulb. Sometimes not even the light bulb. That's the entire trick. Storage collects serious rent on warehouse-grade product. Now walk the cost side. A large facility runs on 1 or 2 employees, and a growing number run on none, just cameras, keypads, and a call center. Nobody lives there, so nothing gets cooked, flushed, or broken. There's no renovation between tenants. Someone moves out, you sweep the floor, you re-rent it the same week. Property taxes and insurance are real, marketing is real, and that's most of the list. The result shows up in public filings. Public Storage, the industry's giant, has reported same-store direct operating margins around 78% in recent years. Even a well-run private facility commonly lands somewhere in the 60 to 70% range. Offices, hotels, apartments, nothing else in mainstream real estate touches those numbers. Low costs also mean a low pain threshold. Because so little goes out the door each month, a storage facility can cover its bills at occupancy levels that would bankrupt a hotel. National occupancy today sits in the low to mid-80s, and the industry treats that as a rough patch, not a crisis. Most businesses dream of surviving on 80% of capacity. Storage complains about it. And one more feature hides in plain sight. Every lease is month to month. That sounds like a weakness, since any tenant can walk whenever they want. In practice, it means the owner can reprice every unit, every month, forever. No other landlord on earth gets a deal like that. Which raises the question this entire business is built on. If tenants can leave any month they choose, why don't they? The answer has nothing to do with real estate. It lives in your garage. Meet the industry's favorite customer. He rented a 10 by 10 in March after moving somewhere smaller. Temporary, he said. He'd clear it out next month. That was 6 years ago. He pays every month, visits twice a year, and the stuff inside stopped being worth the rent a long time ago. The numbers say he's normal. By recent industry estimates, the average storage stay has stretched to roughly 18 to 20 months, up from something like 9 to 14 months a decade ago. Operators report that only around 1 tenant in 10 leaves within 3 months. A small percentage stay more than 10 years. Why? Because leaving requires a truck, a free weekend, and a series of painful decisions about your own life. Every box is a verdict. Keep it, sell it, or admit you spent $400 storing something you're about to throw away. $90 a month is cheaper than that feeling. So the check keeps clearing. The industry even has shorthand for what fills the units. They call it the 4 Ds: death, divorce, downsizing, and dislocation. A parent passes and nobody can face the furniture. A marriage splits one household into 2. A job moves you across the country on 60 days' notice. Storage demand feeds on disruption. And that's exactly why it holds up in recessions. Bad times move people around, and moved people rent units. Underneath it all sits the greatest tailwind in American business. We own too much stuff. Surveys suggest close to 4 in 10 Americans have rented storage at some point, and roughly 2/3 of current renters have a garage at home. They pay for space they already own, to hold things they no longer use. The country has built about 21 square feet of storage space for every household in America. Enough to give every family in the nation its own walk-in closet by the freeway. Buying things is fun. Getting rid of things feels like grief. Storage monetizes the gap between those two feelings. at $1 a square foot indefinitely. So the industry has a customer who can't make himself leave, sitting on a lease that can be repriced monthly. You can probably see where this is going. The big operators certainly did. They built software for it. Here's the play, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Banks run teaser rates on credit cards. Storage runs them on garages. Step 1. Win the move-in. The move-in customer is the only customer who comparison shops, so the algorithm prices the first month absurdly low. $1 specials. Half off online. Whatever gets your stuff behind the door. Step 2. Wait. Commonly 3 to 6 months, according to industry reporting. Long enough for the unit to fill up and the pain of moving to set in. Step 3. Raise the rate. Then raise it again, commonly every 6 to 12 months. The industry calls these existing customer rate increases, and the software behind them is calibrated to one brutal insight. The price that makes you actually rent a truck is far, far higher than the price you'll grumble about and pay. So the customer who moved in at $60 is paying $132 years later, while the sign outside still advertises $60 to the next person. Regulators have started circling. New York City went after Extra Space over its pricing practices, in a case reported settled for around $1.7 million, and California tightened its renewal rules in 2025. The industry's own trade press openly debates how hard the model can be pushed. But as of today, pushed it is. And notice who can run this play. A REIT with thousands of stores can afford to enrage its angriest 10%, because the software knows the other 90% will stay. A small operator who faces his tenants in the parking lot every weekend mostly can't stomach it. So he leaves money on the table, and his facility appraises lower because of it. That's the polite way of saying the giants carry a weapon the little guy won't fire. Now let's talk about what that means for who actually wins. For decades, storage was the last cottage industry in American real estate. Tens of thousands of facilities owned by farmers, dentists, and retired contractors. That era is ending in slow motion. The public REITs and U-Haul now control roughly a third of all U.S. storage space by industry counts. And their reach goes further than ownership, because they also manage thousands of independently owned facilities for a fee, with their brand on the gate and their algorithm on the rents. Across a growing share of the map, the mom-and-pop facility is mom-and-pop in name only. Then came the boom. Cheap money and pandemic chaos sent occupancy to roughly 96% in 2021. And developers responded the way developers always do. National inventory grew by something like 8 or 9% in just a few years. You can guess the sequel. Street rates fell by double digits 2 years running in 2023 and 2024, and national occupancy slid into the low to mid-80s. In overbuilt Sunbelt metros like Atlanta, Dallas, and Phoenix, new facilities opened across the street from each other and started a price war with somebody's retirement money. Here's the cold arithmetic that boom left behind. The new builder paying today's construction costs needs high street rates to survive lease-up. The REIT across the road can cut street rates below his break-even and hold them there for years, because its buildings were paid off decades ago, and its existing tenants are quietly absorbing rate increases the whole time. Guess who blinks first? So the honest version of the small operator's endgame is this. The exit is the product. You buy or build, you professionalize, you fatten the income statement for 5 or 7 years, and then you sell to the consolidators, who are, of course, the REITs. In this industry, the little guy's greatest triumph is becoming a line item in Public Storage's annual report. Knowing all of that, the costs, the margins, the algorithm, the giants, is the laziest money in real estate still worth chasing? Here's the honest scorecard. The business model deserves its reputation. Storage really does turn cheap steel into some of the highest margins in real estate. It really does hold up in recessions because disruption drives demand. The tenants really don't leave. As a machine, it's beautiful. But the era of easy is over. The obvious markets are built out, and plenty are overbuilt. Construction costs have climbed far past the numbers in the old get-rich seminars. And across the street sits a public company with a 78% margin, a pricing algorithm, and infinite patience. So the honest playbook in 2026 looks like this. You don't outbuild the REITs, and you don't outprice their software. You hunt where they don't bother looking. The small town, the aging drive-up facility owned by a man who still takes checks, the below-market rent roll nobody has touched since the 90s. You buy the underperformance, run it the way the giants would, and eventually sell it to them. It's still one of the best boring businesses in America. It just became a professional's game while everyone was staring at the orange doors. And the next time you drive past those doors, look again. Behind everyone is a decision somebody keeps postponing. A divorce, a downsize, an inheritance nobody could face. The steal is cheap. What's expensive is the decision the tenant keeps not making. That's what the owner really collects on. Everyone thinks storage facilities rent space. Now you know what they actually rent. Time. To people who can't decide. And the meter runs monthly. If you want to see how the same machine works on businesses you walk past every day, from car washes to vending machines, that's what this channel does. Subscribe and pick your next building.